Kyle McQueen, and we are here today. I want to talk about some quarterback stuff. I'm going to read some tea leaves down in Miami. Little brief Monday Night Football recap, mainly to get into the whole Jacoby Kyler situation. Is Kyler done in Arizona? We'll figure that out. But the reason everyone clicked on this link is the trade deadline has come and passed. And I will admit, because I'm going to fly through these real quick because I started recording this and my internet crashed. And then now I have to redo the whole thing. But 16 teams by my count involved in a trade at the trade deadline. Didn't feel as exciting to me as a Vikings fan because the Vikings didn't do anything, which I'm fine with. But the Eagles lead us off. They make a couple moves. They get Jair Alexander from the Ravens. I don't expect much from that. He hasn't really done anything for the Ravens. He's been down the last couple of years, had a lot of injury issues throughout his history in the league. But I think the Eagles and their fans are just hoping that he could be better than Adoree Jackson and Kelly Ringo. God forbid any of those guys had to be on the field for them. The Jalen Phillips acquisition I do like. It's a third-round pick. He was a first-round pick who hasn't quite lived up to the billing, mainly because of injuries. I think he's been a good player when he's out there. He's just dealt with a lot of injuries in his career. But, they're a team, they're going to get comp picks. They lost Milton Williams in the offseason. They lost Josh Sweat. So the Eagles are perpetually getting third and fourth round comp picks. They've done a nice job loading up on picks. So they feel like, you can unload a third round pick and it's not going to kill you. And you get a guy who they need pass rush help. They lost Josh Sweat. You lose Milton Williams, like I said. Jalen Carter just hasn't been consistent getting pressure. They haven't really gotten hardly any pressure off the edge. Nolan Smith was on IR. So you add a nice young edge rusher that maybe he plays well for you the rest of the season. He makes an impact. Maybe they extend him. If not, he leaves and they could get a comp pick if he signs somewhere else and plays well somewhere else and essentially recoup that third round pick that they shelled out. I don't know if it would be quite to that level, maybe a fourth or a fifth round pick, but when you consider that in for just a short-term rental at a position of dire need for the Eagles and a skill set of dire need for the Eagles, I like that for them. Baltimore gets Draymond Jones from Tennessee. They had traded Odafe Owe a couple weeks ago for Alohi Gilman to allow them to kind of put Kyle Hamilton mainly in the slot. Needed some pass rush help, needed some edge rushing help, so they get that. And Draymond Jones has been a solid player throughout his career. Logan Wilson goes from Cincinnati to Dallas. He's been trying to get out of town for a while now. It's just a seventh-round pick. Hasn't been as good this year and maybe last year as he had been previously, but again, you're playing on what is currently the worst defense in the history of the National Football League. They're the only team in history, at least thus far, to give up an average of over 130 rushing yards per game and over 260 passing yards per game, and they are also on pace to give up the most points any team ever has given up in a season, so that would, by multiple metrics, make them the worst defense in the history of football. And when you're in that situation, it is what it is. If you get out of there, is as bad as Dallas's defense has been this year, and they've been terrible. A lot more talent to work with and to have around you as a Logan Wilson than you were dealing with in Cincinnati. So he has a chance to step in and kind of get his play back to where he's used to. The Cowboys seem like they have a clear vision for him, so we'll see how that works out for him. Again, it's just a seventh-round pick, so it's not the worst thing in the world, even if he doesn't work out. Jacoby Myers finally gets out of Vegas, goes to Jacksonville for a fourth and a sixth-round pick. I like this move for Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr., I believe, has a high ankle sprain. Travis Hunter is on IR. So you kind of, for a team that's 5-3, squarely in the playoff hunt, need some receiving weapons in the short term and even in the long term. It allows you maybe to mix Travis Hunter in more on defense, not have to rely as much on him on offense. You get Brian Thomas Jr. back. You got a nice pairing with him and Myers, so I like that for them. And he was gonna get his way out of Vegas anyway. So like you get a fourth and a sixth if you're Vegas. I like that for both of them. Rashid Shaheed goes from New Orleans to Seattle for a fourth and a fifth. I love this for Seattle. You get a proven dynamic deep threat that, Cooper Kupp, I believe, is injured now and just hasn't been maybe what they hoped. I think we all kind of looked at him last year and felt like, is Cooper cooked? He might be. But you get a guy who could take the top off, stretch the defense, let Jackson Smith and Jigba, who even without a proven deep threat has been slicing and dicing teams. He's on pace for over 2,000 yards receiving. He has like 900 and something thus far this season. But that's just going to make his life that much more easier running intermediate routes. So I love that for them. And, New Orleans, you're in a complete and total rebuild. You get an extra fourth, an extra fifth. Kind of just, if you can go out and draft well in those middle rounds, you get yourself a couple more picks as ammo to fill out the roster moving forward in the vision of the new regime. Joe Tryon Shoyinka for a late round pick swap goes from Cleveland to Chicago. He's been a disappointment in his career, I believe, as a former first round pick, but I don't think Chicago's expecting him to like suddenly turn it around and become a superstar. I think it's more the fact that Dayo Odeyingbo, I believe, is out for the season with an Achilles now. So you have a hole there. So you're just trying to fill an injury hole, similar to Trevor Penning going from New Orleans to the Chargers for a 2027 sixth round pick. Again, New Orleans just adding some day 3 picks to use either as ammo to move up or just fill out depth on your roster as you turn the roster over in a rebuild. Trevor Penning also has been a disappointment in his career. He's going to get to play tackle with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt now out for the season. Came in as a tackle, kicked into guard with the New Orleans Saints having Talisa Fuaga and then drafting Kelvin Banks Jr. this year. He's been arguably worse at guard than he was at tackle, but if you're the Chargers, like, you just need a warm body with experience that knows how to start in this league just to play, because you're, once again, the Chargers are charging and everyone in their trenches is getting hurt. Jasir Taylor for a conditional 7th round pick in 2028 goes from the Chargers to the Jets. Probably a non-factor ultimately. And then the two big deals, Sauce Gardner to the Colts for a 2026 first, 2027 first, and Adonai Mitchell. Huge overpay for the Colts. I'm not going to grade this or any of these. I think grading mid-season trades or even off-season trades is largely stupid because you don't know what anyone's going to do with these picks. And ultimately, that's what you can get 2 first-round picks and draft 2 busts who are out of the league in 2 years, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you did terrible. You can give him an A+ today, and you give him an F 3 years from now. So what's the point in grading it? But just at face value, it's a lot to give up for a corner. In my youth, in my young days as a diehard football fan, I was very much a desperate man who wanted my Vikings to draft and develop a shutdown corner. Antoine Winfield Jr. is my all-time favorite player, but I like just a shutdown boundary corner. We finally got it with Xavier Rhodes, and Rhodes were closed, and it was fantastic. But the older I get and the more of a football psycho that I become, I've sort of taken on the Belichickian mindset of corners being a weak link group, much like offensive line, where you're better off having a room with 5 solid, good players where there's no real drop off for other teams to exploit, because like you're gonna get injuries and guys are gonna have to come in, and then offenses can scheme to pick on you. That I'd rather have 5 solid to really good corners than like 1 or 2 like a great corner and a good corner, and then 3 bad corners that the offense can just scheme to, okay, we're not going to throw at that guy. We're just going to exploit these other guys who are terrible. So So I don't know, 2 firsts and AD Mitchell, who I love Adonai Mitchell. Last year, he is his, I don't know what the exact wording on the stat is. It's like the rate at which a receiver is open. It was like over 80% of routes run, he was open. But he had Anthony Richardson passing him the ball, who is horrible, and Joe Flacco was also terrible last year. And then this year, he kind of fell out of favor. He dropped the ball at the goal line. Hasn't really played much since then, and they got a ton of talent in their receiver room. You got Michael Pittman Jr., who had a couple monster catches 2 or 3 weeks ago. Josh Downs, who's a really good player. Alec Pierce, a really good player. Tyler Warren is unbelievable. Big John Taylor in the backfield. Like, they got weapons all over the place. He kind of just got lost in the shuffle. And again, with 2 first-round picks, I don't like giving up on a high second-round pick at receiver a year and a half into his career when it's not. I don't think it's readily apparent that he's just bad at football or can't adjust to the pros. I think it's just by circumstance he's not getting the run that he maybe you would expect. But I still really like him. Again, he was open over 80% of routes run in his rookie year and just had terrible quarterback play. A really good route runner, very fluid. I was big on AD Mitchell coming out in the draft, and I'm still high on him. I think that's a steal for the Jets. Like, if it was a first round pick and AD Mitchell, I'd still be like, okay. Like, you're rebuilding is by the time you've rebuilt, corners have a tendency to fall off a cliff. If we're 3 years down the road, like, and Sauce is 28 years old, 29 years old, like Jair Alexander's 28 years old and he's falling off the cliff. So, like, you might as well get some value for him. You get a first round pick and AD Mitchell, but you get 2 firsts and AD Mitchell. I think it's a steal for the Jets, loading up on draft picks. But I can't sit here like the ESPN Muppets gave the Colts a D for this trade. I can't do that. They're 7-2. They're tied at the top of the AFC. They've been a middling team the last few years, haven't made the playoffs, but with that in mind, I feel like they've been better than maybe we all sort of viewed them as because they weren't making the playoffs. They pop up this year. Again, they got all those weapons on offense. The defense is playing really well. They got my boy Cam Bynum. I love me some Cam Beasley. Great glue guy, great locker room guy, great Hall of Fame celebration guy. But he's also a tremendously clutch player, a playmaker. He could do a lot of different things from the safety position. So I think adding a shutdown corner to that, I expect, Sauce the last year and a half has kind of been not his expected all-pro self that he was coming into the league. But I think part of that's just you're on the Jets, man. Everyone on that Jets defense, ton of talent, and they've been terrible because it's like you're the Jets. From the top down, from Woody Johnson down, it's just a terrible organization. The vibes are terrible. The culture's bad. And Aaron Glenn's trying, and I like Aaron Glenn. I think he has a chance of turning it around as much as Woody Johnson and his terrible ownership will afford him opportunities to actually instill a culture and get things turned around. But I expect Sauce to be back closer to his all-pro self in Indy. And I mean, they're a team that looks at it and says, like, we're hot right now. We got everything going. Our offensive line's playing well. Big John Taylor's doing Big John Taylor things out of the backfield. Offensive Player of the Year candidate right now, probably up there along with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Defense is humming. We got some playmakers on defense. We're turning the ball over. Let's add a shutdown corner to it. Is it going to cost us 2 first-round picks? Are we mortgaging the future a little bit? Yes. Does it look bad on paper? Maybe. Did we overpay? Absolutely. But you got a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. I'm not as bullish on that for the Colts this season as I think some people are, just because I've seen this before where a team kind of goes from mid and they pop up, and like usually it takes a year or two to like really solidify yourself in that position. Like, once you get into the playoffs, you get to the second round of the playoffs, you get to the conference title game, you're playing the Chiefs, you're playing the Bills, you're playing the Ravens, teams like that they've been there, they're hungry, they know what it takes. I don't know if they're prepared to go all the way this year, but Sauce is young. He's 25 years old maybe, and he's under contract. And the Jets are going to have to eat all that dead cap, which is another thing that makes this a little more enticing for the Colts is he just signed a massive new deal, but all that salary, or all the signing bonus money, the Jets have to pay it. So you're getting him cheaper. He's getting his money, but you're getting him cheaper per year than the Jets were if they had just kept him. And I think that the cost that it's costing the Jets on that signing bonus is part of why it costs so much draft capital to acquire him, because they have to, by the rules, eat all of that money. So it's like, if we're going to trade him away and we have to eat all this money, like, you're going to have to sweeten the pot, make the deal a little bit better for us. And the culture, like, listen, we had a shutdown corner to this team, the way the offense is playing, the weapons that we have, the way the offensive line's playing last week, notwithstanding the way Daniel Jones is playing, the way the defense is playing and making plays. Like, F them picks. Let's do it. Then the Jets turn around, they trade Quinnen Williams to Dallas for a 2026 second-round pick, a 2027 first-round pick, and Mozzie Smith as the sweetener, which is not as sweet as A.D. Mitchell, in my opinion. You could say this is a bit rich. Again, a first-round pick and a second-round pick for anybody that's not a star quarterback is a lot to pay. If you're getting like Tyreek Hill in his prime, I believe went for a first and a second to Miami. But Quinnen Williams, he's 27 years old. He'll be 28 in December. All-pro defensive tackle. And people are clowning Jerry for this, and I think it's ridiculous. And I have been accused of holding Jerry's water, and I'll hold it again today. The man is clearly not without flaw, but we talked about this on the show a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the Max Crosby to Dallas rumors, and how if you can acquire an elite defensive lineman, an elite pass rusher, and the capital it's going to cost you to acquire them is less than the capital you acquired for Micah Parsons, and then you're going to pay them less than you had to pay Micah, then I think ultimately it all works out to a great move. Is Quinnen Williams going to have the same impact that Micah Parsons is going to have? Not necessarily, and they do play different positions, but Quinnen Williams is going to help more in the run game than Micah is. He's not going to get as much pass rush, obviously, as an elite top 3 to 5 edge rusher that Micah Parsons is, but he's going to get you pass rush up the middle. What's the quickest way to get pressure on the quarterback? Up the middle. You put him next to Kenny Clark, and I see people saying, but they got O.C. Odigizua that they just extended, and they got Kenny Clark. What do they need Quinnen Williams for? It's like, if there's any group in football that requires a rotation, it is defensive line. So, like, if you give me Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and Osa Odigizua, like, I'm going to find a way to get these dudes a bunch of snaps and keep them fresh and get after the quarterback and stop the run. I think from just adding Quinnen Williams, like, cost aside, adding Quinnen Williams, monster move. It's only going to cost him, I want to say $24 million a year on average, because again, the Jets have to pay the signing bonus, and he still has several years left on his deal. Those numbers will come off of the Jets cap, so that's part of the reason you got to sweeten the pot. But you look at like Micah Parsons, and some of this is funny money. Is the average is $45 million a year, so for $21 million less per year, you get an All-Pro elite defensive tackle. I mean, you still want to add to the edge rusher room at some point, I imagine. But I really like Donovan Ezeraku coming out of the draft this year. And they still got some pieces, Marshawn Kneeland. So, like, I love this for the Cowboys. You get the 2 1s and Kenny Clark for Micah, and then you trade a 1 and a 2, and it will be the higher of at least the first round pick, possibly also the second round pick. I guess they only had the 1 second round pick. So yeah, the higher of their 2 2027 firsts. So essentially you flip Mozzie Smith and Micah Parsons for Quinnen Williams and Kenny Clark, and a second round pick for a first round pick in 2026. And you have an elite defensive lineman who can stop the run and get pressure on the quarterback. With the same with Sauce, I don't care what the numbers say over the last year and a half. That's more about the Jets and their culture than it is any sort of decline in play. Quinnen Williams is going to get back to, at the very least, a Pro Bowl level, and you upgrade a second round pick to a first round pick. And you're saving $21 million per year to have an elite pass rushing defensive lineman. I think ultimately what Jerry pulled off it's a good move. Like the ESPN Muppets, the Ben Solaks, the Seth Walders, they gave this an F, which again, grades in general are stupid, but to give this an F and sit here and talk about, they already have two defensive tackles that they like, and you could have taken the money that you're paying Quinnen Williams and you could have put some of that into Micah Parsons. Like, okay, but where's the other $21 million coming from? You paid Dak $60 million a year. Now, again, if it was me, and I've said this before, I would not have paid Dak. I would have paid CD. I would have paid Micah. I would have paid Deron Bland. And I would have let Dak walk, and I would have went and signed Sam Darnold for $30 million a year and drafted a guy. But that's not what they did. They signed Dak. So if we take that out of the equation, where they were at, you signed Dak, you signed CD, they signed Deron Bland. They signed someone else too. I think once the season started. I can't remember. Maybe Ferguson. Yeah, I think they paid Ferguson. That you... They couldn't afford to pay Micah Parsons once you do those other deals. I would have paid Micah over Dak. Personally, that's what I would have done. That was, in my opinion, a mistake. I like Dak. I think Dak is overall an underrated quarterback. I think he gets way too much hate, but he ain't $60 million. He ain't worth $60 million. Patrick Mahomes worth $60 million. Josh Allen's worth $60 million. Lamar Jackson's worth $60 million. Ain't nobody else worth $60 million. That just it just is what it is. But they don't have the money to pay Micah. Even as a team that drafts and develops very well, which the Cowboys do. So to me, you're getting an elite defensive lineman who can get pressure. He can get pressure up the middle, which if you can get consistent pressure up the middle, that's more valuable than pressure off the edge. I've said on the show, I think elite edge rushers are a bit overrated and a bit overpaid. If you got one, great. But are they truly guys that change the fortune of your franchise? Is Myles Garrett changing the Browns, the fortune of their franchise? No. Is Max Crosby changing the fortune of the Raiders franchise? No. TJ Watt has been on a team for 10 years now that wins 10 games and loses in the first round of the playoffs. Now, the Packers being a team that's already a fringe contender going out and adding an elite pass rusher, that's a different story. And we'll see how the cap works out. But the way they've built their receiver room where they don't have any elite receivers, they treat that as a weak link group. We got 5 or 6 guys that we like that are good receivers. And we'll see if Matthew Golden can become an elite receiver. But he's a rookie. So if he does, you got him for cheap for the next 3-4 years with the 5th year option. They're not paying an elite receiver. So they can afford to pay the quarterback, and then they can afford to go out and pay an elite edge rusher. But I just think you add Quinnen Williams to that group, I think you're swapping an all-pro caliber edge rusher for an all-pro caliber defensive tackle who's going to be better against the run, and you're upgrading a first-round pick to a second-round pick, and you're saving $21 million a year. I don't see how that's an F. You want to say the overall moves, including paying Dak $60 million, is an F? I still think that's way too harsh, but you want to give that a C- or a D+, I can hear that argument. But if we're just talking about what they've done with Micah and then Quinnen Williams and the shuffling of those picks, and these Muppets, they'll get into the whole ordeal of Oh, well, the draft value charts, and because they have to give up the higher of the first round picks, and then they're going to be bad, so that second round pick is actually going to be fairly high. It's like the Cowboys are probably going to be like no worse than the 10th worst team in the league this year. So like you're looking at pick 42 as opposed to the Packers might be pick 29, 30. So like moving up 10 to 12 picks in as like a total of factoring all of these two deals together, like to still end up with an all pro defensive tackle who's squarely in his prime. I just don't see how that's enough. I like this. I mean, again, it looks ugly when you lose a guy who's a top 3 to 5 player at his position, and his position is considered a premium position. And Micah Parsons is a fantastic player, and you can move him all around the line, and he can impact the game in a variety of ways. It looks bad, but like overall, in the long run, you pair these two moves together, I think it's a good move. I think what the Packers did was smart. I thought it was a great move for the Packers. I think this trade for the Jets and the capital that they got, independent of the Sauce Gardner trade, is a great move for the Jets. And I think the two moves paired together for the Cowboys, I think ultimately is at the very least neutral. So to give this man an F grade and to say that Jerry doesn't know what the hell he's doing because of this is ridiculous. If you want to say Jerry doesn't know what he's doing, Jerry knows what he's doing. Jerry damn well knows what he's doing. You could argue whether what he's doing and what he knows what he's doing is the right thing to do. That is a totally different story. But Jerry damn well knows what he's doing. And you put these two moves together, and at the very least, I think they cancel each other out to like, okay, you still got an all-pro defensive lineman who's going to get pressure at the cost of, it's a less sexy position. It's a slightly older player, but you're upgrading a second round pick to a first round pick, and ultimately you're saving $21 million a year against the cap without getting into the funny money and the language and all that stuff. And I'm sure it might shake out a little bit different, but I see you, Jerry. I appreciate it. I like what you're doing, pal. And then, I mean, the Jets getting 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and Adonai Mitchell in exchange for 2 proven players in their prime that, despite being squarely in their primes, might not fit your timeline. If you're a Jets fan, you got to be patient, and I know you've been patient for fucking 50 years now. 50. What? This is gonna be Super Bowl 60. They haven't been in the Super Bowl since Super Bowl 3, so 57 years. Damn near 60 years you guys have been patient. So I feel bad for you, but you could be patient another couple years, another 2-3 years. Maybe the Jets will nail all of these picks and completely rebuild the core. You still got Garrett Wilson. Adonai Mitchell has a chance to step up and be a guy across from Garrett Wilson. And you still got some pieces. You still got Jermaine Johnson. It's not all is not lost if you're a Jets fan. But I don't know, man. I'm always gonna defend the Cowboys because I just think it's so stupid the way people hate the Cowboys because they're talked about too much. It ain't their fault. It's Jerry's fault, but it's ESPN's fault as well. Like, just don't watch ESPN. You don't want to hear about the Cowboys, don't watch ESPN. I don't know what else to tell you. Cowboys fans have been suffering for 30 years. They do not come out here and say this is our year every year. Just because the memes and Stephen A. Smith tell you something does not make it true. Leave the Cowboys fans alone. They're going through enough. But if you're a Cowboys fan, I like this for you. If you're a Cowboys fan, I don't like Monday night for you. I don't want to say they didn't get smoked by the Cardinals, but it was a bad game. It was an ugly game. The offense was not on point, turnovers, and then defensively again. The Cowboys defense is atrocious this season, atrocious. But I think the big takeaway that I continue taking away is The Cardinals' offense just looks better with Jacoby Brissett. I've not been a Kyler Murray fan at all, ever, at any point in his professional career. He's highly athletic. He's super talented. He's got the arm talent. He can run around. He can do all this stuff, but he's just not a leader of men. And he has a tendency, and even if you take that out of it and how he mopes around, and the Call of Duty comes out and he turns into a ghost, and he's been to the playoffs one time. This is his 7th season, I believe. And they are 3-5. In the NFC, that's going to be tough, but they got a bunch of games left against the NFC West. If they can somehow run the table in the NFC West and knock all those guys down, work their way back up, I do think the Cardinals are a better team than their 3-5 record would indicate, and they look like a much better team with Jacoby Brissett under center, because Kyler Murray, he doesn't trust the process of the system. It's just like, if he feels like, I don't really like this, then he's gonna freelance. Jacoby Brissett's going to go in there and just operate the offense. And even if the offense isn't perfect, like, at least you're operating in the offense. Guys know what's going to happen. They know what's coming because he's just operating the offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. has been a revelation with Jacoby Brissett under center versus when Kyler was under center, and he looked like, we're not going to use the B word, but it wasn't looking great for Marvin Harrison Jr. to start out, but it's looked fantastic the last few weeks. Kyler just got put on IR today with was it a foot, ankle, something down there. But then Gannon came out and said that even if Kyler was cleared and ready to go, that Jacoby was going to be the guy. And I mean, with that, you have to look at it and say, like, Kyler probably doesn't have a future in Arizona. I mean, it's going to be a sticky situation with the dead cap, but we saw what the Broncos did with Russ. So they can make that happen, especially if you can. I would assume Jacoby Brissett's maybe on a 1-year deal, but no matter what, unless he balls out to a level unseen in his career and leads the Cardinals deep into the playoffs, I can't imagine him getting a monster contract. And even if they go and win the Super Bowl, he ain't gonna get more than the $30 million Sam Darnold got. So if you can jettison Kyler and you can retain Jacoby Brissett on a cheap deal, and then maybe start looking at the draft for your true future guy. But as far as Kyler goes, man, I don't know. I just it's rough because I just don't think he's got the mentality and the demeanor to lead a team as a quarterback. He's gonna get, if the Cardinals move on, he will get another opportunity somewhere to start right away. But I don't see how it's gonna help. The Cardinals have had really good to borderline great defenses in his tenure. He's had, according to people smarter than me, a genius offensive mind in Cliff Kingsbury. He's had talent at receiver. He's had talent around him, and they're just always a very mid to sub-mid team. And I think his lack of leadership is a huge part of that. The intangibles matter. You can't measure them. And all the Ben Solaks, again, Seth Walder, Bill Barnwell, these clowns that get paid to talk about this stuff, they don't know. I know more about ball than these guys, and I'm doing this for free. You're welcome. But these clowns, they get paid for this stuff, and the analytics nerds that have taken over sports, anything that they can't quantify, it doesn't exist to them. These are the people that say momentum doesn't exist. Any human being that has ever watched a football game can tell you momentum is real. Just because you can't put a number on it, just because you can't quantify it, just because you can't measure it, does not mean that it's not real. And I've talked about this. I did my big quarterback study ahead of the 2024 draft when my Minnesota Vikings were in the market, and I said they got to get J.J. McCarthy. That's the guy. That's the guy that you're actually going to be in position to get, because you're not going to get up to get one of those top 3 guys. This is a guy that you're in position to get that, all the talk, he doesn't have the arm strength, and, he's not that much of an athlete. If you watch the tape, he's got incredible arm strength, and he's a tremendous athlete. But beyond that, I don't care about the arm talent. Everyone wants to talk about, oh, you look at Drake May or Justin Herbert, they just look like a quarterback. Oh, this guy, look at his athleticism, his ability to escape the pocket. Oh, look at the arm talent, the arm talent, the arm talent, the arm talent. All of that is important to some degree, but it means nothing if you don't have the intangibles. You look at Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the best 3 quarterbacks in football. You look at the all-time greats, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Drew Brees. You go back before that, Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway, Johnny Unitas, Otto Graham, all of these guys. Not that I've been sitting around crunching Otto Graham tape in my spare time, because I absolutely have not. But the all-time great QBs, the truly great QBs, even Eli Manning, who was, let's be real, a sub-mid quarterback his entire career, won 2 Super Bowls because he has certain intangibles that cannot be measured. They are important. Leadership intangibles, a level of intensity, a level of drive, an ability to instill calm in the team around you, an ability to get the troops rallied around you, to buy in, to believe in you, to be the vessel for the coaching and the GM and the organizational culture, to be the vessel of that culture into the team. And Kyler Murray, to me, he's the opposite of that. Whereas J.J. McCarthy has it in spades. And I want to touch on this real quick. I saved it for the end so you can click off while I ramble about how much I love J.J. McCarthy. But there's been a lot of accusations of, oh, you guys are glazing him. He threw for 143 passing yards. You're glazing a guy who threw for 143 passing yards. I don't give a fuck about passing yards, and neither should you. Passing yards do not matter. Passing yards have a negative correlation to winning. Oftentimes, the guy's throwing for the most yards. I've heard this all week. Geno Smith last year threw for more passing yards than Matt Stafford. Would you rather have Geno Smith than Matt Stafford? No, because passing yards do not matter. They don't matter at all. It has no correlation to winning whatsoever. I don't care about passing yards. I care about winning Super Bowls. Do you demonstrate things that will correlate to winning games, winning playoff games, winning Super Bowls? If J.J. McCarthy averages 143 passing yards throughout his career and he brings a Super Bowl to Minnesota, I don't give a fuck. He can average 90 passing yards a game. But if he's going to go out there, answer a Lions team that goes right down the field and scores a touchdown and looks like they're setting up to blow you out yet again, if he can go out there and lead a scoring drive, lead you right down the field and answer them and throw a dot to Justin Jefferson to tie the game up and come back once your defense gets you the ball back and go back down and take a 7-point lead early in that game, and then come back at the very end of the game in a gotta-have-it play on a 3rd down where it's a 3-point game. If you don't get this 3rd down, you're punting it back to the Lions. And just knowing who the Lions are and knowing your recent history against the Lions, they are going to drive down the field and at the very least tie that game. You're going to have to go into overtime in their building, or honestly, probably more likely, they're going to drive down the field, score a touchdown, and win the game. You got to have this play. 3rd and 5. You put the ball in the hands of the young kid making his 3rd career start, and he puts the ball in a bucket on a dot, a dart, to Jalen Naylor, the exact throw in the exact spot to the exact player with the exact route with the exact right play call to win that game. If he's going to do that, he can throw for 50 yards a game for the rest of his career. I do not care. Am I glazing him? That's for you to judge. But you're either glazing or hating. There's no in between. You can't talk about anybody without, you're glazing them, or, you're hating on this guy. It's ridiculous. Let me be happy about this. Let Vikings fans who are happy about J.J. McCarthy's performance in his 3rd career game point to the intangible things and say, like, wow, what a great way to answer the Lions' opening touchdown drive. After being out for 6 weeks, to come in and look that sharp and drive the team down the field and tie the game, and then drive them right back down the field and take the lead, and not relinquish the lead the entire game. What a great throw in a gotta have it situation with all the pressure on to seal the game. Why can't we be excited about that? Why is that glazing? Why is that glazing? It's not. If you think that's glazing, please kindly shut the hell up because you don't know what you're talking about. 143 passing yards. If you're going to throw passing yards in my face for any argument that's not purely about passing yards, which I will never make because I don't care about passing yards. If you throw passing yards in my face as an argument for anything, then I know for a fact that you don't know ball. And we hear it. Me, Caesar, the viewers, you kind people watching this right now, you know ball. That's why you're here, because you know ball and you want to know ball more, just like I want to know ball more. So I go out and I try to learn more ball to bring more ball knowledge to the football heads who want to know ball more, because you guys know ball, but you want more ball knowledge. And that's what we do here. So we ain't glazing McCarthy. We're giving him the proper credit in the third career start of parsing through the nuance and the context and the details of why we're encouraged for him moving forward. I kind of want to leave it at there, but I'll hit this last point. The tea leaves in Miami. Dolphins leadership says they fired Chris Grier, and good riddance. I know he's been with the organization for 25 years and blah, 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 but he completely mismanaged the roster, completely mismanaged assets. In fact, going back to the Quinnen Williams point, if you have a guy who could play nose tackle, stuff the run, who can two gap, and who can get pressure on the quarterback up the middle the way Quinnen Williams can and the way Christian Wilkins could before his injury, and he's now currently not on a team while dealing with the injury and whatever weird thing happened with the Raiders. The fact that they let him go shows the mismanagement of that roster from an organizational level, with Chris Grier running the management of the actual roster. And they couldn't re-sign him because they didn't have the money. Because they had to pay Tyreek Hill, even though he's getting up there in age. They had to pay Jalen Waddle. They paid Tua, 53.5 million, something like that. It's the same thing as the Bengals. These dog shit organizations, they do not know how to manage their assets and resources. You cannot pay a quarterback 50 plus million and pay two receivers. If you are paying a quarterback 50 plus million, you need to look at him and say, you're only getting one of these two receivers. We're going to have to get another guy in here, and you're going to have to make that guy good enough where he can go somewhere else at some point in 4 years and he can make $20 to $35 million. We're paying you 50, 52.5, 53.5, 55, $60 million if you're Dak Prescott. Make an average player above average. Make a young guy great. We ain't paying to have you have two elite weapons. If we're going to pay for two elite weapons, we're going to go get a mid-tier quarterback that has some upside and some potential. We're going to go draft a young guy and say, hey, you got two elite weapons that's going to help you come along in the league. You can't do it. You cannot pay a quarterback $50+ million and then pay two receivers, elite receiver money. You cannot do it. And then let your two-gapping, pass-rushing, nose tackle walk out the door. You cannot do it. And that's why Chris Grier got fired, among many other mismanagements. But they said that they're going to let Mike McDaniel stick it out the rest of the year. And I'm not going to be surprised if Mike McDaniel sticks around next year. I don't know what the vibes are with the locker room. It's tough when you're a guy like McDaniel. You come in, he's a scrawny, nerdy, dweeby looking guy. He's quirky, he's weird, he talks weird. He says 162 times in a press conference or whatever it was because someone kept count on it. And when everything's going good, it's like, oh, he's funny, he's quirky, it's a breath of fresh air. And then when things start going south, it's like, oh, this is awkward, this is cringy, this is bad, I don't like this. I don't know, he might have the full respect of that locker room where they're willing to follow him in the battle. He might be fiery behind the scenes and lighting guys up for screwing things up. You see him this year on the sideline losing his mind. And so I don't know. But I could fully understand why the team would be rolling their eyes at him and be like, all right, we're listening to this guy. We're following this guy. that he could be a front-running coach, I don't know. But the fact that they only traded Jalen Phillips, who was in a contract year and has had the injury issues, and they kept Bradley Chubb, and they still have Chop Robinson, who they drafted last year. They didn't trade Jalen Waddle, which I wouldn't have anyway. Like he's a young player. He's a really good receiver. You couldn't trade Tyreek Hill because of the contract combined with the fact that he's injured and he's out for the rest of the year. So like nobody's going to trade for him because they're not getting anything from him for the stretch run this year in the playoffs. But the fact that that's all they really did was get rid of Jalen Phillips leads me to believe to some extent, I wouldn't be surprised either way, I guess I would say, of whether they fire McDaniel after the year or they keep him for next year. It wouldn't shock me because we've seen him be good with Tua. We've seen Tua be good with him. And like you can't really get out from under the Tua contract. You can if you just eat a ton of dead cap, but then what's it going to be? Is it a Saints situation where you bring in a young coach and just be like, listen, it doesn't matter what happens this year. Like you're coming into a shit situation. Like we're going to give you a runway here. Just, we know it's going to be bad. Just get the team to buy in the way that Kellen Moore has gotten the Saints to buy in, where like they compete and they play hard every week. Or like when Dan Campbell went into the Lions, they were awful, but the team fought hard every single game. Like, if you get rid of Tua, that's kind of what you're asking the next coach to come in if you get rid of McDaniel. So I think there's a real chance, just based on them not really doing much of anything other than moving off of Jalen Phillips in a contract year, that they might just run it back and say, like, let's see if we can add some stuff and see if our new GM can kind of manage the assets better and try and get things back on track next year. And then if it goes awry next year, then you're in a better position to eat the rest of Tua's contract, get him out of town, fire McDaniel, bring a guy in where you're not hanging all this dead cap on top of him, and just completely start fresh at that point. It wouldn't shock me. So we'll see. That's kind of my reading of the tea leaves down in Miami. But anyway, this is the trade deadline show. Couple massive moves. If you think Jerry Jones is an idiot and the Cowboys stink because you listen to Stephen A. Smith and the Instagram memes, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. Do you think the Colts made the wrong move trading all these picks for the Colts? Drop a comment. Let me know. Please like, please subscribe. Help us grow the channel. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And as always, until next time, take it easy, football heads.
Like a dog in the street.